Let's say I had two variables, x is 5, y is 9. And I'm going to try to make this question make sense. Let's say I wanted to swap the variables. So I want x to be whatever y is, and I want y to be whatever x is. Now, obviously I can just go x is 9 and y is 5. Right? But let's say we were writing code and we didn't know what x and y were yet. Let's say, and we'll see examples of this in the future, let's say x and y weren't previously defined in our code, but maybe they came from the user. Maybe the user entered those in somehow. Again, we'll see that example in the future. Let's say I do not know what x and y is. How would I swap them?
In order for that to happen.
Yeah, so let's attempt to do this the wrong way first. If I try to say y equals x and x equals y, let's see if that works or doesn't work. What happens on this line? What's y? Y is now 5, and what's x? So on this line, when I say x equals y, they both stay the same, right? So that is an unsuccessful way to swap them. So Dale's mentioning usage of a third variable, which we can use as follows. So let's make up a third variable called z and say z is x. Okay, so at this point, x is 5, y is 9, and z is also 5. And now we say x is what? 9. What's y? What's z? And what do we say at the end? What's the final line we have to do? Well, before printing it, how do we get, we want to swap them. So x is now what y was, but how do we get y to be what x was? Y equals z. So now, x is still 9, y is 5, and z is 5. Now we don't really care about z. We just use that as what Dale called a temporary variable in order to achieve our result of swapping them. And then, we could print the values at the end if we want to test them out, which we probably should. Yeah, so we successfully swapped them. This is the first example of algorithmic thinking, which is like figuring out how to get a computer to do something which to a human is just so obvious. Right? To us, if you ask me to swap x and y, I don't know, I just swap them. How do you tell a computer that's limited by only understanding things like variables? How do we get the computer, how do we almost trick it into swapping variables for us? So we thought of a clever way. This is a clever solution. It's using a third variable to achieve that. The more you work with programming, the more you learn these tricks, and the more they become ingrained in you. But this trick isn't a natural thing. And if I asked you to do this as an exercise, perhaps it would have taken you a long time to figure that out. And that's okay. It's just these are the things, once you've seen this once before, you're like, oh, I know the swapping trick, using a third variable. So yeah, this takes a little bit of cleverness. But the more you don't have to worry about being clever as a programmer. It's as you see more and more examples, then you learn how to do these clever things, because you've seen them before.